Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and I am back with a fun shaker card project for you today, just in time for the holidays. I don't know about you, but I am all geared up. But I am using supplies that aren't necessarily holiday supplies. This is the layered fireworks stencil. There are 5 stencils. You layer them up. You can make tons of different firework patterns, but we're going to use it to make a peppermint pattern. Next, we're using the coffee mug card die set and the cocoa mug card add-on. I love these. So I have cut the card that's in the shape of a mug from some heavyweight blue cardstock, and I am just looking through my firework stencils, looking for ones that have kind of that peppermint shape. I'm not going to do all the layers of the firework, just that sort of round, I don't know, burst of color that comes out from the middle. We're going to do 3 of them. This first one, I am using some pink oxide ink. It's spun sugar. And then I'm going to rotate and try to find the center. There are some weird cuts in here as I'm trying to get my head out of your way. So forgive me, please. But I just used my rag to wipe off some of that ink. And then I'm bringing in a white pigment ink. This is going to end up being pretty subtle. I have some light pigment inks on a pastel card base. I am going to go over it at the end here with some glittery embossing powder. So I'm not worried that those inks are still a little wet. I actually kind of want that. For my second peppermint twirl, I'm actually going to add a little bit of mint tape to mask right along the edge of my card there so that I can have this going from the front of the card and then off the edge. I like it when it looks like the design extends beyond the borders of the card. It just makes it feel a little bigger, a little fuller, and I was able to create my visual triangle a little better this way. For this one, I've used tumbled glass oxide ink, and then I'll bring in my white pigment ink for the second layer. I found it was really important to start with my darker ink so that I could actually see that ink through the stencil to try to turn it and line up the second layer so it would fit right in between. I'm using broken china as my last layer and a different spot on the stencils just to create another size, make it look like we've got a little bit of interest, a little bit of difference from one peppermint to the other. My friends, you could just use pattern paper here. If you're like, Sarah, that's a lot of work. I know, but I like it. I just think it's fun. But absolutely use that card shape to cut just half of it in some pattern paper. You can trim off the handle, trim it neatly on the edge, and then just use pattern paper on the inside, and that would be absolutely stunning. While I was getting all excited about pattern paper, I poured on some embossing powder. It is clear with some glitter in it, and it's gorgeous, and it's sticking to that ink because it's a pigment ink. Those 2 inks take a long time to dry unless you use your heat tool. So I just get this lovely shimmery glittery layer over everything. I waited to remove that tape until after I'd poured on the embossing powder, just because sometimes it does leave just the slightest hint of a sticky residue, and I didn't want that powder, embossing powder, sticking to it. So now I can fold my card in half and we can work on the shaker elements. So I'm going to go ahead and tape this closed. It's going to be a little bit easier this way. I have cut that cocoa add-on twice. Once is from that same blue cardstock and the other is from some fun foam I stole from my kids' craft stash, right? It's nothing fancy, just regular fun foam. And I put a little bit of rip and stick double-sided adhesive sheet on the back. Then I recut the card base, right? That mug shape. And all I need is that center section, right? I didn't cut really the entire thing, just one side of the mug, the front side. And then here you can see me peeling off some of the backing paper from that rip and stick sheet. It's just a double-sided adhesive sheet from Trinity stamps. It's lovely. It cuts beautifully. I didn't take it all off because that foam gets wiggly. It gets wiggly and it can stretch out a little bit. And so I decided to line up the top first. And then I am just going slowly and using my fingers to make sure I am lining up the edge of that foam with the edge of the acetate. You could use foam strips here if you wanted, or just any foam and cut it into really thin strips. That would work just fine. But it is a pretty delicate frame. And so I thought, well, let's give this a try. Let's see how it works. It's not super thick craft foam. I will say it would have been nice to use maybe like a 3mm foam strip, something that would let me put some bigger shaker bits in there, but it turns out really cute, I think. So I'm excited about it. On the end here, I am just being really, really careful that I am not pulling and stretching at all, that everything's going to fit okay. But even so, you're going to see that when I get to the end of this, I have some foam that isn't laying flat. It's like doubling up. And so I just took in my scissors and did a little bit of surgery, just like if you were using foam tape, and just cut out a little bit of that foam tape. And then I stuck it together to make sure that the ends were touching, and no one will ever know. Okay, so I thought this worked out pretty nicely if you've got some rip and stick sheet. And then I just saved the middle of that foam for my next project. I'm going to add some wet glue onto my cardstock piece. That's going to go over top of the acetate. So you're not seeing the foam, you're seeing, right, what looks just like the mug. I like to add my glue and then use my finger to smooth it out. Or if you don't like to do that, you could just tap this off on some scratch paper, like lay it pretty flat and pick it back up, because I don't want the glue to ooze out onto that acetate, right? That's no fun. Then you're trying to like remove glue. You can do it if you get glue where you don't want it. I just use a Q-tip and a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and I go very gently to remove that. You could use water, but I don't want my cardstock getting wet. So that works really well for me. For my shaker mix, I'm actually kind of making my own. So this is the Pink Winter Wonderland mix. I'm so in love with Pink Christmas, Pink Halloween, you name it. I'm here for it. There are some large sort of plastic balls in there that I removed because, remember, my foam isn't very thick, but otherwise pretty flat. Then I have some Shimmer Snowflakes and Winter Sky embellishments. The Shimmer Snowflakes are this beautiful iridescent, and then the other snowflakes are like a clay mix. I pulled out the larger ones again just because it's a really thin shaker, but I love that that also means it's not going to get crushed, even if kids are handling it, because there's lots of kids in my family. Like, you can press on this one and it's going to be okay. So I put a few in the middle. I have extra mix that I will use for another card, and then I'm going to add my glue very carefully onto that foam. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing I did before. After I get the glue on there, I'm going to sort of run my finger over it just to remove the excess. It's just the thinnest little line of glue, and it's not going to ooze out. I'm not going to end up with shaker bits stuck on the inside of my card in the corners, and that is my favorite way to do it. When I set this on the card, I am lining it up at the top first. I just feel like I have a firmer grip on it because not all of that is acetate. And then I will line it up with everything else, and it fits just perfectly. So here is just the base of our mug. That shaker piece and then the toppings here are part of that cocoa add-on. Okay, so you can get the mug card all by itself, and there are tons of fun ways to dress that up with other die cuts. If you look on the website for Trinity, you're going to see lots and lots of examples that came out long before this add-on, so definitely worth checking out. For my topping, my like whipped topping, there is a little squiggly piece, like somebody put, mine's pink glitter, but like chocolate on top of the whipped cream and let it run down in there. Well, I put glue on the back of that and I just left it there to dry and get nice and tacky. And then here, I'm taking the piece dripping down the side of the mug and adding that first. I shouldn't have done that. I should have waited, right? But I wanted to let that glue set up. But this way, when I am gluing it onto some glitter cardstock, which doesn't always like to stick right away, because I let it sit for a minute, it grabbed beautifully. I'm just going to trim off some of these squiggly bits at the bottom. That way it'll look nice and neat when it's done. So I go to add this onto the top and I realize I actually want it to butt right up against that dripping frosting, but the glue hadn't set up yet. So I stuck my pokey tool in there just to loosen the very top of it. And that was plenty, right? Now I'm going to add glue straight onto the mug and I'm going to slide just a little bit, right? So that the very top edge of the drip is overlapping that whipped cream. Love that. Then I'll use the fine tip of my glue bottle just to tuck in there a little bit more glue in those places where I pried it up to make sure everything fit right. So you could leave it like this. I think this is super fun, really beautiful, but we're going to add a sentiment. This is the Simply Sentimental Happy, and this is going to say Happy holidays. So I just need to stamp holidays, right? I'm going to do that in a little strip sentiment, and then I'll use the word dies for the happy. I love that the word dies for happy will also cut out the stamped happies. They're the same fonts and the same sizes. And then I'll use the sentiment strip dies from Emergency Card Essentials #1 to cut out holidays. There are actually 2 dies that are 1/4 inch thick. And then I have another one that's 3/8 of an inch, and it creates a beautiful matte layer. So now I have a long strip with the word holidays, and I'm going to create equal margins on either side by using the line created by the inside edge of the finger guard on my trimmer. After that, sometimes I'll trim off extra slivers so it looks exactly the way I want it to, but it's easier to trim off matching slivers than not matching slivers, at least for me. Then I'm going to lay that on the 3/8 inch strip, and there is an equal margin on the top and bottom and on the left, and I'll just trim slivers until the right hand side matches, and I have this beautifully matted holidays. Above that, you'll see the word happy that I have cut out from that die set. And then I have this piece of shimmery vellum that's been in my stash for so long, and it's beautiful and I love it. I have rip and stick sheet, that double-sided adhesive sheet on the back of the word happy. It turns the whole thing into a sticker and makes it super easy to just lay it right on the shadow layer. Sometimes I'll add another die cut underneath the shadow to kind of pop it up, but I didn't feel like it was necessary here. So I'm just going to be really careful with my glue and put tiny little dots only where you can sort of see the letters through the vellum, right? You can sort of see I've lifted it up at an odd angle for the camera, but that's so that I'm making sure I can see the light shining through it. And I'm just being patient and being careful. Once I get all the glue on there, I'm going to set that down on my desk, and it looks really quick here, but I let it sit there for about a minute. Then I can use my tweezers just to help me find exactly where I want it. And when I press that down onto the card, that glue has had time to really get tacky, and it's not going to ooze out. You're not going to see it behind the vellum. Then I can glue on my sub sentiment. I was careful with how much I put on there, so I didn't really have to worry about it oozing out or giving it time to set up, though certainly you could if it's something you're worried about. I have a few embellishments that I'm going to add on top, and these are from Emergency Card Essentials #2. The set is full of tons of really great basics along with a pop-up mechanism. And then it has these like unicorn sparkles and a bunch of stars. And I have just, again, put rip and stick sheet behind them. And I like to stick them on the edge of my pickup stick. And then I can kind of audition where do I want them to go. I struggle with this. Let me know if you do too. If you have sort of a system or a thing you keep in mind when you try to figure out where they go. I try to start with the largest ones, create kind of a triangle with those, and then I'm bringing in the smaller ones. This has a mix of the sparkles, but then also of these small dots that I really love. And if you aren't real comfortable figuring out where they go, I love that they are arranged on the die in a really pleasing layout. So sometimes I'll just use the negative from the die itself to help guide me and tell me where I want to put those. But there they are on the front, and I've got my shaker pieces too. We have just a couple of pieces left for the inside of the card. So this comes in the original die set, right? The mug-shaped card die set has a gift card holder. I'm adding glue on the back, but I'm being really careful to leave those half circle tabs open. You don't want those held down with glue. That's what's going to hold your gift card, and it fits just perfectly inside that mug. Or you could put it on the back of the mug, right? There's so many ways you could do this. Super fun. I want to add an inside sentiment too. So this is the printable that I designed to go with Emergency Card Essentials #2. You scan the QR code on the back of the package and it takes you to this download. It's a couple of pages. And this sentiment says fa la 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 latte. And I just thought that was super fun to go with our shaker mug. So I'm using the dies from Emergency Card Essentials #1. That's a mouthful, you guys. And I've cut out that 1 3/4 inch circle and then a 2-inch circle mat, and it leaves this lovely deboss detail around the edges. I used a laser printer for mine, and so I am going to hot foil them. This is toner foil, right? It's different than glimmer foil. If you look for deco foil or any of those types of, like, look for toner foil, that will work. I'm heating up my mini mink to heat level 4. You could try this with your laminator. Let it preheat for 20 minutes at least. Then I have stuck the foil on top of my sentiment, and then it's in a heavyweight card base, and I'm just going to run that through. It only takes, I don't know, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. This is at double time, so you can see it moves pretty quickly. It's melting the little plastic bits that are in that toner. And when that toner cools off, it grabs onto the foil and you end up with this beautiful sentiment. So I'm sort of shaking it, just letting it cool down. And when I peel that back, I have this incredible sparkle and shine, and I love it. And it's just another sort of element of pink to pop and sort of give me a really great accent on my card. I glued the sentiment to the matte layer, but I'll use removable adhesive to add it to the card in case I want to change this to a different sentiment later. Emergency card sentiments are interchangeable sizes. There are strip sentiments, rectangles, and circles. They're all the same size. And so I like to make it really easy to swap them out. If you're interested in more of those, you get free sentiments with Emergency Card Essentials Die Set 1 and 2. And then I have a playlist on my YouTube channel with tons of those free downloads. So I'll link that as well. So I used my little pokey tool to lift up those half moons and slide a gift card, or in this case, just a hotel key, inside the card. But that is our finished project. It has this fun shaker, a gift card on the inside, fun sparkle. Oh, I hope you love this. I hope that you are inspired. My friends, thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.